Previously on Woodbrew.
So we are super excited to build a teardrop camper from scratch.
Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to another Woodbrew video. We're jumping right in here by using a block plane to clean up some of the edges on the top of the camper. This video is all about getting prepped to actually finish up the exterior of the camper, and that involves cleaning everything up, sanding a whole bunch, applying some fiberglass, and then ultimately a primer right before our final coat, which is going to be a bed liner product. So in this video, we're going to be getting prepped for that. So grab your favorite beverage and sit back and enjoy this week's video. So I'm up here getting a lot of this epoxy cleaned up, getting everything sanded and prepped, and I just wanted to take a second to acknowledge how strong this roof turned out. This was the one weak area that when I was modeling this I was concerned about, because you have this really large opening up here as well as a pretty large span for plywood to span. Granted, there are like two little support beams in there, but this lamination technique is so incredibly strong. I mean, I'm sitting right here in the weakest part of the camper and I can't feel just any deflection, which is really impressive. Like, I can, look at this. Like, you would think that that would have some deflection in it, especially when you consider the fact that there are no supporting beams here or here. It's just based on the way that this is constructed. It's all self-supporting once you assemble it. Very weak until it's assembled, but once it is incredibly rigid, and I'm really proud of the way that this is turning out, is what I'm getting at. I think this is I think I'm on to something with this whole design and idea with this. And yeah, I just wanted to share that because I was blown away. I mean, look at this. That's a lot of weight. Like, that's a lot of weight. And it's dynamic weight too, because I'm shifting and moving around. And to not have that have any deflection is really awesome. I mean, there's so little actual internal frame in this component. It's just that the sandwich itself is incredibly strong, so it remains super lightweight. Well guys, our campaign with iFixit, fighting for you and I's right to repair, is coming to an end, unfortunately. However, I did want to say thank you again to iFixit for supporting our channel and supporting this entire build series, but more so and more importantly, supporting our right to repair, which is very important to Molly and I. We've been, obviously talking a lot about it in this series, but if you're unfamiliar with it, our right to repair is constantly under attack by big manufacturers and other corporations and things, and they're making it more and more difficult for us as consumers to be able to actually repair the things that we have, meaning that we just have to simply go buy the new thing, which creates more e-waste, and it's just a whole slew of problems when a lot of it could have been avoided by just allowing you and I to be able to fix it ourselves. And iFixit is the company that's leading that fight. And they're doing that by selling awesome precision driver bits just like this one right here. You can pick those up in the link in the description below, as well as fix kits, which allow you to fix common things that you already have for very inexpensive, and it's very DIY and easy to do. So if you have something in your life that needs to be fixed, or these make really great gifts for someone, if you know someone who's in need of a starter set of precision driver bits. So if you're interested at all, check the links in the description below where you can get a discount code and know that you'll be supporting all of our right to repair when you support iFixit. They're an amazing company and we're really proud to be partnering with them. But with that out of the way, let's get back into the build. So to fill all of our pinholes, cracks, crevices, all those things, we are using Total Boat's Total Fair. This is an epoxy fairing compound. It's different than a traditional just simple wood filler. This is designed to be used on boats. It says even above or below the water line. But the main reason why we're using this is that it has very good properties for dealing with flexing and movement, because boats deal with that a lot. So this is going to be really perfect for a camper that's going to be bouncing down the road. We don't want any of this stuff breaking out and falling out or causing any form of delamination with in our fiberglass later. So we want to use a really high quality filler, so that's why we're going with this product. It's also extremely easy to use. It's just 1-to-1 ratio when you mix it, and then it dries in 3 hours and then can be sanded. So it's really simple, easy to use product. It's not super cheap if you're used to paying for cheap wood fillers. However, it's well worth the investment. Now, I rarely use a product like this at this type of volume, so my mixing techniques, the products that I'm using to mix and stuff, not ideal. So if you have any suggestions for us, leave a comment down below so that we can improve this on the next go around. Once this product mixes fully green, then it's ready to go. And it actually is good for up to 3/4 of an inch of a gap, which is massive. This is by far on the entire camper the biggest gap that we have. This was the one mistake I made on overall width and angle, and it's about 1/4 of an inch at most on the front side, and then it narrows down like this. So this is a pretty small area to fill with this, but this is kind of the perfect product to use here because it becomes a structural part of this camper. It cures extremely hard, bonds really well to this, and it won't break if the hatch and things are flexing. So perfect solution and perfect product to use on this case. So we'll see how it goes.
So we are to a point now where everything needs sanding, and we ran out of sandpaper. So sandpaper should be coming tomorrow. So in the meantime, needless to say, our shop is an absolute disaster. So I'm gonna spend a little time, well, a lot of time, cleaning this place up because it needs it bad.
Well guys, we ran out of sandpaper and it took quite a while for us to get some more in, but thankfully these are all back in stock on Amazon now. So if you're interested in what sandpaper we use, I'll leave a link in the description below. You know, we bought all this, we're not being paid to say this, but this is hands down, without a doubt, the best sandpaper I've ever used. Well, let's just actually fast forward a little bit. Do not take my advice, do not get this sandpaper. This stuff is pretty terrible. So this is the Cubitron stuff that I've used in the past that I ran out of. Best sandpaper I've ever had in my life. This extract Cubitron sandpaper, look at this. All the sandpaper fell off. One of these pads would last me multiple projects, and that's not an exaggeration. Like, I literally mean one of these would last me like 3 projects. It would just continually go down and grit a little bit, and I'd use it for the next grit. This stuff would last me like 15 minutes. It's time to get all of this epoxy filler sanded so that we can do a little bit of fiberglass work, get this thing sealed in so we can wrap this trailer build up. So after doing some more research on this 3M sandpaper, the extract specifically, I found a lot of reviews that had the same sort of issues I did, and they pretty much all revolve around cases where you're going to be touching the edges of a project. So if you're using that sandpaper on flat, big surfaces, say like a tabletop, you're probably going to have really good results. But if you're doing any sort of aggressive sanding or any sort of edge sanding, it's where I think you're going to run into a lot of issues. So what I'll do is I'll leave a link in the description below to the other sandpaper. It's still made by 3M. It's still Cubitron. It's just a padded, not net finish sandpaper, and in my opinion, it is far superior to than the extract is. So yeah, I'll leave a link to that in the description below. But back to this, we're using a flush trim router bit to finalize some of the areas that weren't fully flush trimmed before, and then we're switching over to a round over bit so that we can round over every single corner of this trailer. What that's going to allow the finish to do is have better adhesion. So as we apply our primer, our epoxy, our actual final coat of bed liner, this round over is going to create a much better surface for adhesion, because any sharp corners and finishes get very thin and they're easily broken out. So by rounding everything over, it's going to give us the best possible adhesion. It was at this point in the project that we realized that we needed to actually finish the bottom of this camper before we did any of the outside, because we have to flip it over and we didn't want to damage the outside in the process. So took the back cabinets out to reduce weight and then started the process of flipping this thing over. You know, in hindsight, we should have finished the trailer first, then we should have finished the bottom of the camper, then we should have added the camper to the trailer and then done the exterior. But you know, hindsight's 2020 and we didn't do that. So and we're now forced to flip this camper over.
Well, we didn't think that one through all the way, did we? We're
No,
stuck.
but we have a pretty good plan how we're going to do this now. We're going to make us a little dolly so that we can roll this thing in and out and not have to have it on the trailer, because the trailer makes it hard to flip it over and we got to finish the bottom up, and we need to actually finish the trailer up. So this ought to make it super simple. The next day, we actually flipped the camper back over on top of the dolly, so now it's upside down, and we started to install our fender wells, which needed to be epoxied in place. And this is a pretty crucial joint here because it adds a lot of rigidity to the floor, but it's also a high impact area potentially. So we're playing it safe by doing a lot of prep work and a lot of epoxy here, as well as some mechanical fasteners to get all of these wheel wells installed. Now, anytime I was applying epoxy, any leftover epoxy I had, I would just take that and apply it to any sort of knot or void or any edge of a plywood that I could find, just so that I could start building up layers to really protect any sort of vulnerabilities in this camper's waterproofness. And with all of that out of the way, it's finally time to start sanding the bottom so that we can get ready for fiberglassing, which is a step right before primer, which is the step right before bed liner, which is our final step. So still a lot to go, but it at least feels like we're getting closer now. Now, you always hear about prep work before finish being the most important part of finishing, and I think a lot of us neglect this in our furniture projects because ultimately it probably doesn't matter that much, but on a project like this, it matters significantly. So I'm prepping for the fiberglass, and I'm making sure that everything is blown off, vacuumed off, and then a solvent is used to actually clean the area again, just to make sure that our adhesion is as good as it possibly can be. I've also pre-wet all of the areas. So all the areas that are getting fiberglass have already had some sort of penetrating epoxy applied to that area, so that when we apply the fiberglass, it doesn't all get soaked up immediately by the plywood. And although I have pretty limited experience with fiberglass, I'm very happy with the way this overall turned out. So the process goes like this: simply, pre-wet, so add a lot of material on here, lay your fiberglass down over that, and it sort of helps to sort of stick it down and apply it, having it be pre-wet, but it also helps you get that product pushed through the fiberglass a lot easier, so that you don't have to force it down through there. Now you can lay the fiberglass out and then basically force the product through it. However, I found this pre-wetting technique to be far superior, and so then I come back and add a little bit more epoxy, sort of spreading it out, making sure that the fiberglass is laying flat. And I'm just using a very simple, inexpensive chip brush here. There are all sorts of fancy rollers and things for fiberglass that can help you out on this process, but this has seemed to work pretty well for me in the past, so I went with it here, and ultimately I'm very happy with the way this turned out. I used a very simple 4-inch wide biaxial, I might be saying that wrong, but I'll leave a link to it in the description, fiberglass, which just simply means that it's able to conform to different shapes a lot better than just regular mat. So as we get into the corners and things, I don't really have to cut the fiberglass. It'll just fiberglass will conform to all those little nooks and crannies. And that's the case right here in these wheel wells, where it's quite difficult to get everything wrapped around. This stuff, once it's wet, is able to really conform to all different types of shapes. So on this bottom, any sort of corner, anything that had a potential for water intrusion was getting fiberglass. Now, not only does that help seal everything, it also adds a pretty good amount of structural strength as well. And being as how this is on the bottom, I didn't go way out of my way to make sure that all these joints were super nice and crisp and clean. However, I'm very happy with the results. Anyway, they turned out really, really nicely. Now the next day I came back and sanded all the high spots of the fiberglass down. Oftentimes the edges are prone to sort of lifting up in areas. Also, you can get globs of extra epoxy. So I came back and smoothed all that out, and then actually I added another layer of epoxy on top of that. So I had to do the same amount of prep work as before, and then I just added another layer of epoxy and I extended it out a little bit further just to further seal things in. And I just thought this would be a good idea as, just a little bit of extra support here and extra waterproofing. And with all of that out of the way, we actually could start with the primer. And so with the primer, we're using this Total Protect from Total Boat, which is a 2-part epoxy primer barrier coat. And this stuff is serious. As you can see, it's basically like putty until you mix in this curing agent here, which basically once it's mixed in, it turns into more of a paint consistency. But look at that stuff. It is so thick. It was very odd putting this stuff together. It did not seem like it should be that way, but after mixing, it worked out really, really well. And this is a very serious, totally waterproof, good for below the waterline primer. It's a high build and also sandable. So this is going to be an extremely good primer to apply prior to our bed liner coat. This is going to give that bed liner the best possibility for a long lifespan, and also it's just going to be a second layer of waterproofing to prevent any sort of water intrusion into this camper. Well guys, that's where we're wrapping up this video. We have all of the epoxy primer applied to the bottom, and the next video we'll be applying our bed liner bottom coat. Then we'll be able to flip the entire camper back over and finish up the outside of the camper. And once that's done, we'll be getting super close to wrapping this camper up. So if you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe to our channel so that you get notified when the next video comes out in this series, because you're not gonna wanna miss the final reveal of this camper, because this thing's gonna be flippin' sweet.
Flippin' sweet.
Flippin' sweet. And thank you, iFixit, for supporting our channel and continuing to fight for our right to repair. With all of that out of the way, guys, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Peace.